Couple things I want to talk about, and one of the issues that or how we proceeded last year. First thing I'll speak about, though, is pay raises. Now, my understanding is the budgets that we're looking at with the mayor's recommendation have the 15% pay increase and I think 11% on our insurance cost factored in. Now, that's got, best as I understand it, a 13% across the board raise and then a 2% step. And some people that'll make just a little over 15%. Some people, it might be a hair under 15%, 14.955 or whatever it turns out to be. But the question that we want to discuss is whether we want to address that right now at each budget that we look at, or go ahead and look at what the mayor's recommendation is and then look at this again. The reason I say we'll be looking at this again, the insurance committee will be meeting again. They may have a recommendation to make some changes or tweak that, but we always have the option to revisit this before, budget is finalized. Anyway, that's one decision that we'll need to make. Now, the other thing is how we'll proceed, and I want to read you the notes from our last year's meeting, and basically we did this to try to expedite our meetings. I asked that we consider accepting the mayor's recommendation if there is not a requested change as the amounts that would be used to prepare for the committee's vote for publication and to approve the budget for a commission vote. If there is a motion to change the mayor's recommendation, then roll call votes would be taken on those motions. If not, we basically said, well, it's kind of like a consent agenda, but that is how we proceeded last time. And I'd actually start off by asking for a motion whether to proceed the same way or not this time. Mr. Gooch.
I think we did that the last two times. I think it's very efficient. So my motion is to proceed forward based on your comments.
Okay, and do I hear a second for that? Okay, I have a motion and a second, and basically what we'll do as we review each budget, only if there is a change that some of the committee wants to make will we actually look for a motion. Otherwise, the budget as it's presented to us will be what would go to publication unless there's a change. And again, any of these are subject to change before being final. Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So are we going to put the caveat on there that we're going to reconsider the pay raises when we have more information about our revenues and expenses? I want to be sure that somebody watching this tonight doesn't think we're approving the mayor's budget and they're getting 15%. If we decide later we can only do 10% or something to that effect.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I think it's an excellent idea to point that out. All these are subject to change until they're finalized. We'll actually have a public hearing where people, after they see how the budget has fell out, can make comments to that. As far as the pay raises go, they will not be finalized till the end of the budget.
Well, I would request that be part of our motion, that we will review those when we have better information available.
Commissioner Gooch, will you accept that as part of your motion?
Yes, that was my intent. So,
Commissioner Johnson, will you accept that as your second? Okay. Mark, if you wouldn't mind reflecting that. Or is there any other discussion on how we'll this procedure? Hearing none, let's call roll on this.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries, so that's how we'll go forward. And again, we will be revisiting the pay raises, as Commissioner Stevens mentioned, when we have more information. So thank you. All right, having said that and got that cleared, let's start with our first department, and that's the Board of Equalizations. And Mr. Mitchell, I assume you're here somewhere. That's found on page 1.
sorry, I don't have the Board of Equalization paperwork in front of me. I grabbed everything else. But my request is exactly what the mayor, the mayor requested, so I'm fine with the Board of Equalization number. I would like to let everyone know, and I think Lisa's discussed, when Nissan is coming off of pilot after 40 years, and we anticipate that they are most likely, if they haven't let Lisa know that they're going to appeal, they haven't officially told us that they're going to, but we anticipate that they're probably going to appeal their values, which it may predicate that we may have to come back and request additional funds for consultants for defense of our valuations at that time. But I did want to make you aware that that was out there, and it is a possibility, so there's no surprise going forward. So my request would be for the 47,340 that the mayor has recommended.
You've heard the request. Any questions? Commissioner Dodd.
I don't want to start a trend of micromanaging anything, but the 1,500 in legal notices the mayor added, what's that for? Do you know, Lisa?
That's the statutory mailings that we have to send out with the notifications. I think when we were presenting the budget to the mayor, we just neglected to put it on there.
Any other questions, Commissioner Johnson?
So moved.
Okay. You want to make a change. If you don't want to make a change, we're going to let it stand as presented unless there's a change to be made. So you're good with it like it is. Any other discussion on this particular budget? If not, accept the mayor's recommendation and move to the next agenda item, which again, the property assessor. And Mr. Mitchell, if you want to proceed with that, I'm showing that on page 11.
Now, this is the first year of the combined budget, so that from now on, we won't be operating under two separate budgets. We've consolidated all of the operations down for accounting purposes into one budget. It's more manageable that way. The only differences that I see is, I believe, Lisa, you've added a new line 312 that was not on there before, but it appears to be that's for TMA's contracts that we have with personal property, which is a statutory expenditure. We have to contract out with an outside agency to review all tangible personal property accounts that are subject to audit as determined by the state. Tax Management Associates is the company that we use. They provide us with a bill a couple of times a year, but they provide us an estimate first based on what the state has selected to be reviewed. They present that to us. We ask what the contracted amount's going to be. They give it to us, and that's what we actually use to set the budget figures with. That's the only changes that I see in there, but and this is just for, I'm fine with the mayor's recommendation. The only question that I just want to make you aware of, and I think I sent the mayor an email about it, in the reappraisal plan that the county commission adopted and approved and went to the State Board of Equalization and was adopted at the state level, there were two new positions called for in that reappraisal plan. The state said that the plan, as we presented it to them, was an effective and appropriate plan with the addition of those 2 positions. It was approved by the county commission. It was sent to the state. It was adopted at the state level. So at this point, I want to make you aware of it because, Nick, I don't know what we would do. I don't know where to go with this, to be honest, because I don't know if that puts us in bad standing with the state board if we've submitted them a document and then we don't fill the positions, or how that works. So I don't know, Commissioner Stevens, you might have an idea, because I don't, that it's never happened like that before. So I did want to make you aware of it. We have an opportunity, I guess, at this point, if you decide that, okay, we're going to put those positions back in, or if Nick wants to review it and check and maybe see if that's going to put us in some kind of non-compliance, if what we submitted to the state is no longer what we're going to do, or if we would need at this point to amend our just adopted reappraisal plan so that it conforms with what we're actually doing. I don't know. And maybe that could be addressed when the pay tables are addressed at that point. But I did want to make you aware that what was occurring, so that you have an opportunity to say, well, we'll put it in now, we'll pay them whatever we're going to pay them when we adopt a pay raise, or we'll wait and hear from Nick if the state's going to say, well, no, it's in there, you have to do it. We may not have the option of not doing it. So I just wanted to make everyone aware of what was happening with that. But as far as all the other recommendations, I'm fine with it. I don't want anybody to accuse us of coloring outside of the lines and not doing what we said we were going to do.
Mr. Mitchell.
Yes, sir.
You were mentioning reappraisals there, and we're looking at your property assessors, and I've got that as a different budget. So you're addressing both of these at the same time?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, they're all included in one budget
All right.
this year.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if Lisa had given you the spreadsheet where they were combined down into one. Okay, yeah. So from now on, the reappraisal budget is the only budget for the assessor's office besides the County Board of Equalization.
Okay. Are there any questions for Mr. Mitchell on his budget request?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner?
So I guess I've got 2 questions. The first one is, you said you've got 2 positions. Are they in your budget, in the budgeted recommendation? Because, okay, but in the department request is $200,000 less than the mayor's recommendation.
His has got 2 new positions. The mayor has got not the 2 new positions, but the increase in salaries.
And then my follow-up question is, so if we're combining budgets, the property assessor and the reappraisal, and this may just be simply an accounting decision, I don't know. Is there a reason why we're going with the 52,310 reappraisal and not just property assessor? Because when I think about your office, I think about property assessment. I don't necessarily always think about reappraisal, because I know we have reappraisal years.
Right.
So is there a reason why we went to that category versus the other one?
Contractually, the county can contract with, but the municipalities, by state statute, must reimburse reappraisal functions at least once every 4 years, unless they have a contract to do it more frequently. So the first step of that is having everything consolidated into one budget, so that you're not saying, well, they can say whatever. It really doesn't matter to me, but for accounting purposes, it makes it much simpler for Lisa, because we've had some discussions and stuff with it. But for accounting purposes, it's much simpler. But they don't have the option of paying on an annual basis at all without a contract. And the smaller chunks that they might have to pay, it's paying on installments rather than getting one large bill once every 4 years. So that was the thinking behind it.
Okay, is there any other or further questions for Mr. Mitchell and his budget request? Mr. Allen?
I'm sorry, so are you requesting the 2 positions, or you're not requesting the 2 positions?
I'm sorry.
Are you requesting the 2 additional positions, or you're not? So,
Yes, ma'am, I'm requesting 2 additional positions.
okay, but are they in your 3.1?
They're not in the mayor's recommendation.
No, but in the department request, is,
Yes,
it is
ma'am.
in that.
But the
They will.
department request does not
Not at the salaries.
reflect the increase in salaries.
Gotcha, okay, thank you.
Hopefully, we'll have this real simple soon.
Okay, any further discussion, any more questions? Is there a motion to make any changes to this budget? If not, we're going to go ahead and add this to our agenda and move on to our next item. Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you very much.
Accepting the mayor's recommendation. Okay, next is Human Resources, Ms. Stevenson. On page 2.
Good evening. I accept the mayor's recommendation. The Human Resources Department's budget this year, outside of salaries, is less than it was last year by $38,705. So the only increase in there would be for salaries, because the remainder of the budget was a decrease.
Okay, you've heard the request. Are there any questions from the committee for Ms. Stevenson? While y'all are thinking, I have a quick one or two. When the insurance committee meets again, as far as these 15% pay raises that we're considering now, which is actually what the mayor's recommendation is, do you anticipate any changes that might affect this?
I don't understand the question.
Well, it could be revenue, could be that the insurance committee might want to give a 20% pay increase. I don't know, or a 0% pay increase. Do you anticipate any kind of changes, Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So about a week or so ago, Mercer was our broker, and we got notification through Mr. Elam's office, and Carbon copied to me that Mercer, the gentlemen who were working for us and representing us, all left. There were 6 people at Mercer left and went to another company. They're the ones that had estimated an 11% increase on our major medical hospitalization. And we had been talking, and we interviewed week before last, I believe it was, One Digital. They guaranteed us, and I think there's a meeting tomorrow. No, I got rescheduled. Okay, so anyway, they guaranteed us that they would get it based on our pharmacy formulary, that they could get it down to at least 8, if not 6%, from the 11 that Mercer had talked about. So
when will we know?
we should know within another week or so.
I think they rescheduled the meeting. It's either going to be next Tuesday or Wednesday. They're supposed to get back with everybody, so we'll know better then what they're anticipating, and I'm sure they'll bring that forward to the insurance company.
Will y'all be, well, that's my question.
Yes,
Will you be taking that to insurance?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay,
We will.
and that's when?
End of May, wasn't it?
Yeah, insurance will meet the
Last-
end of May, but this meeting was rescheduled for next week, I believe.
It's either Tuesday or Wednesday. They haven't sent the final.
Okay.
We did, and you may recall, the same group that did our salary survey also did a benefit survey to tell where Rutherford County is, and we're very close. I can resend that out or reprint it for the next time if you want me to, that tells where we are in line with all of the other groups, if you want me to do that.
Please. Just so I've got a clear understanding of what's going on with this Mercer group. I understand with our contract with them is that they are required to, even after the plugs pull, they have to maintain services for 90 days. Is that right? Is that part of the contract?
I believe, Nick, it's a 90-day out clause with Mercer. Is that correct? 90-day out clause with Mercer.
Please come up to a microphone.
Questions from our property assessor while I'm trying to get here too. So I think what I recall in reviewing the agreements with Mercer is it did provide for a 90-day out clause, and there was not a for cause or without cause on that. It was, you could just give 90 days notice, and the mayor's office, I think, did that a week and a half or 2 weeks ago.
So we're basically still covered till insurance.
The way that I
understand
understand it is the relationship stays the same. They're entitled to their whatever they would be entitled to payment-wise, but they're also obligated to continue servicing us.
Well, and it's still with Cigna. It's still with the same carrier. It's just the broker has changed. And when Digital One says they can give it to us for 8%, almost 6% less than what Mercer was doing, charges 11% with Cigna. No brainer for me.
Understood. Okay, thank you. Are there, before you take off, Commissioner Allen?
Oh, I'm sorry.
And Sonia, this is not, I guess, so much for you as it is back to the Mercer conversation. So did we give anybody else a chance to bid on that if we were going to exit the relationship with Mercer? Because we had insurance committee on Thursday. Mercer had a team here. They seem to be performing their duties. And so then the next thing I know, we're out of that relationship with no notification to insurance. I'm just uncomfortable about handing this work over to a firm without there being at least some examination of what our options are.
Well, I made an executive decision, Commissioner, that it was an emergency. We don't have time to put it out to bid. All we had to do is give notice. And so that decision was based on a monetary decision with somebody that I knew with One Digital from, I've known them for years. This company came forward. They brought their team in out of Atlanta, and they said that they would be 8% guaranteed, 8% over the 11% that Mercer, all with Cigna. And I had read a letter, which I'm still concerned about a lawsuit that was brought down in Ocala County with Cigna, working with another company where the school board, actually there was manipulations of the rates. And that lawsuit was brought because Cigna was working with this other company called Gallagher, and they manipulated the rates for benefit and didn't give the benefit back to the school board of who their client was. So I have some concerns even with Cigna as go forward, but we can't afford for a break in insurance coverage. But as far as the contract with the broker, I felt very uncomfortable. Ed didn't know any of those people. They all showed up in mass, never introduced themselves to us, nor to Ed or anybody in the insurance department or in risk management committee. And so I made an executive decision. If the commission wants to overturn me, then they have that will.
Mr. Allen?
The contract that we had was with Mercer, not with the team that left, so, which means that the data resides with Mercer. And so the Mercer team was here providing the services that we contracted with them to do. I didn't see any demonstrated need for an emergency. You didn't explain that there was any sort of emergency happening with the insurance committee. So this is my fundamental concern.
Mm-hmm.
We talk a lot about transparency in government.
That's correct.
I want us to be transparent when we make this decision. There could potentially be other vendors out there during this 90-day period while we're still being served by Mercer. who could potentially present their qualifications, and it might be the team that you're talking about. That might be very well who we choose. I don't have strong feelings about who we choose, other than I want the process itself to be 100% transparent. So that's my primary concern.
Well, I told One Digital, is the name of the company, that when the term expires with Mercer, which is later this year, that it would have to go out to bid in the proper fashion. But I didn't feel comfortable with Mercer, with all 6 of their team members with no notice, just up and left. I mean, they had come to the insurance committee and reported to us the day before we got the notification that they were leaving, that they had left, and with no transparency at all. You know, I felt very uncomfortable, so I went with someone that I felt at least could take care of us with Cigna, with 3% less minimum on the race. We'll wait and see what occurs. We're supposed to meet with them next week. You're welcome to come, and we'll invite everybody on the finance committee if they'd like to come.
Commissioner Dodd.
The meeting next week, is that in front of the risk committee, or who's that in front of?
No, this is a meeting with them to come make a presentation.
To whom? To who are they making the presentation to?
Well, when's our insurance committee next scheduled, Sonia? Do you remember? Would it?
2 more weeks, right?
I think it's
2 more
towards the end of
Thursdays?
May. I can call an emergency meeting
Last Thursday
as
of
chairman. I can call an emergency meeting of the full insurance committee, or I can let them come in and make a presentation.
26th, yes.
26th.
Yeah,
And that was trying to get us in a position of setting the budget. That's why it was an emergency, in my opinion, of trying to get those numbers in instead of waiting until sometime in the fall when Mercer's contract runs out. That's why I deemed it an emergency.
We've plugged an 11% increase, so we've plugged
We've got 11%
in our,
Yes,
which is kind of a worst case scenario.
Correct.
I think that's a safe worst case. And we have a 90-day out period with the current contract. I'm not on that committee, but if I were on the risk and insurance committee, I would want to use part of that 90 days to do a RFP or RFQ, because we've got 11 worked in. And if we had a better opportunity in July, perhaps we could adjust it then. Is that? I share the concern that we've made a decision with behind closed doors. That's not the right term. We've made the decision rapidly.
The door was open.
I know, that's right. Excuse me. I retract that. But I think the insurance committee needs to look into this.
Well, and sure. So that was a decision whether or not to go ahead and call an emergency meeting of the insurance committee, or bring it before this committee here.
And Ed presents his budget today, the insurance, and so there may be some questions that I don't know the answers to give you right away that he may.
And this may
have
not
the
be the
answer
right
to.
even committee to even have this conversation, but since it came up, I would, perhaps we're going to have to address it to some extent.
Yeah, I didn't expect this to come up.
Yeah, and
you know,
I
looking at
apologize
this,
for
but I did ask
usurping
for
your-
contingencies if something could change, and this could make a change, so I appreciate it, us fleshing this out. So my understanding is the insurance committee will look at this on the 26th.
Yes, sir.
Now, having said all that, are there any questions for Sonia on her budget as it's proposed? Are there any motions to make a change to the recommendation that we're looking at? Hearing none, we're going to accept her proposal as forwarded and move to the next one. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.
Okay, County Attorney, Mr. Christensen.
And committee, good evening. I have met with the mayor and Ms. Nolan for many years. Our office has been a no change budget scenario. for at least 8, almost 9 years. It has been that way. And so in examining where we are at this point in time and dealing with increased costs across the board, I have proposed a budget that does have an increase from years past, but we still believe it is a reasonable increase to account for increase in staffing cost, leasing cost, insurance, et cetera. I've met with the mayor and Ms. Nolan, and I believe everybody is on board with that. I would note, I believe that what's been presented, Ms. Nolan, is it the 292,450?
Here, in the mayor's recommendation.
So if you'll see on the form, under county attorney, there are the department request and then the mayor board recommendation. The 292,450, that was approved by the steering committee on May 2nd. That is the number that I approached the mayor and Ms. Nolan with, and that accounts for an increase in the salary to the county attorney position and also an increase in the amount for legal services. You'll see that there are a number of line items in between those two figures that account for various other costs. Those are variable costs that are going to be set by the county. Those deal with the increase in pay that may come with the 15%. We have an individual who's a county employee that works in our office and assists with delinquent taxes. And then there's also benefits and other costs that are unrelated to the two that I mentioned that are at the top and the bottom of that figure. And so I don't think anybody knows quite yet what those variable costs will be, but if you'll see from the mayor's recommendation, I believe that they are for a 15%. And so that's where you're seeing the 301,668 takes into account those variable costs, but the actual department request from me is 292,450. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for our attorney? Our time to get him back here, guys, or to help him, of course. Hearing no recommendations for change, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation of $301,668.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Next is the Election Commission. Mr. Farley.
Good evening, everyone. Our budget here pretty much is unchanged from last year with the exception of a couple items. Of course, one, the pay scales, and then also the line item 709, which our replacement cost for all of our technology has been budgeted within hours. And then with the conversation with Cody, we're going to go ahead and consolidate that into the OIT budget. Then that way, the volume purchases and different things, we might be able to save some money there. So instead of just buying it outright, just buying it all through them. So that would be a reduction of $20,000 there. So, but everything else is the same, and I accept the mayor's recommendation. Well, there is a $100,000 decrease in postage because of the reapportionment. We do not have that, so that is a change as well. One that should note.
You've heard the request. Do I have any questions for Mr. Farley? Is there a motion to make any changes? Hearing none, we will accept the mayor's recommendation and add that to our agenda. Thank you, Mr. Farley.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next is Register of Deeds. Ms. Dahlbar, welcome.
We have a pretty skinny budget almost all the time anyway. It's pretty much a continuation budget, nothing new or large developments in there. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. would remind you that a portion of ours are, there's only 15 line items, 5 of which are related to employees' benefits for come out of our EDP fund, which is restricted for our use, which is 317 data processing services, 334 maintenance agreements, 411 data processing supplies, and 709 data processing equipment. We expect revenues coming in from that to be about $153,000 to $155,000, and I think those totals are well beneath that. So everything else, I think the other remaining items are out of salaries, and EDP would be about $6,000 worth of expenses for office supplies and phones and things of that nature. Very tight budget.
Okay, you've heard the request. Any questions from the committee? Is there a motion to make any changes? If not, being none, we're going to go ahead and accept the mayor's recommendation and move on to the next item. Thank you. Okay, next up is planning and engineering. Demasi Hughes, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Taking it down just a little bit. Our budget tonight, for the most part, is similar to budgets from last year, and again, we don't have a whole lot of frills in our budget. The largest changes that you will see in ours is under line item 103 for plan. This is the planning. Mike will get into the stormwater budget next, but under the assistance line item, this is for a new planner position that we requested. That has been included in the mayor's recommendation. Some other larger changes that you may see really are in some of the smaller line items, such as postal charges. You'll recall just several months back, we went from a 500-foot notification radius for rezonings to 1,000 feet, so we've upped our postage charges. Also, we've upped our gasoline charges as well. From that, just because of what's been going on with the gas prices. Also under office supplies, you'll notice that has gone up fairly substantially. The reason for that is we need a new hanging file for our recorded plat Mylars. Those are, the cabinets is not just like a little cabinet, these are fireproof cabinets that we use for those in the event something were to happen in the office, and also a hanging file for some construction drawings as well. That should be more than enough to cover those costs. There is one line item Mike and I would like to speak a little bit more on, and that was a change that was made to our request of line item 321, that's engineering services. We were requesting $70,000 for that. That has been eliminated, but we wanted to elaborate a little more on that line item, and I'll let Mike handle that.
Right. Thank you, Doug. I talked this over with the mayor, in light of the backlog of FEMA grants, that the time it takes to get these approved, we are okay with that being removed. Oftentimes it takes several years to get a grant approved. So what we're going to do is just go ahead and apply for the grant through Planning and Public Works like we would normally, and then if we get it next year or the year after, we would ask for our portion of the grant money. But that was for engineering services to study unmapped flood sections in the county. Approximately there's 30 miles of unmapped sections of streams. We were going to apply for a grant to cover a 5-mile section with this. So I'm okay with this being removed right now, because it could be a year and a half, 2 years down the line before we even see the results of this.
Mike, as we do development, are we not requiring the developers to do a study in some of these areas? So
yes,
some
we
of
do.
these will be picked up.
Yes, sir. Yes, if it is a developer, but what we come across is just an individual owner that would like to build a house on a tract of land in an unmapped section of a stream. We don't feel it's equitable for them to pay for a $120,000 flood study just to build a house. So
understand. Thank you.
Yes, sir. And then, like I said, we're okay with that. And that was the only changes that Doug did not mention.
Does that conclude both of y'all's?
Yes, for planning and engineering, I'll cover stormwater next.
And beyond what Mike was just talking about, everything else with the budget, we accept the mayor's recommendation.
Right.
Okay, are there any questions for either of these gentlemen? See the request and the increase there. Do I hear a motion to make any changes to this budget? Hearing none, we're going to go ahead and accept Planning and Engineering's request and the mayor's request. And we'll move to the next one. Mike?
Stormwater, yes, sir. Thank you, Chairman. This is essentially the same budget as we've had before, except for some modest increases in gasoline due to the prices going up so much recently. And then the other change would be the salary increases. But we agree with the mayor's recommendation.
Okay, you've seen the request. Any questions for? Engineering services, 321, what exactly would those be?
That is for dye tracing. That would be to hire a consultant, say Dr. Ogden or someone similar to that. And it actually did come into play at a planning commission item last night. And it was glad that we had that, but if we could find more opportunities for dye tracing. Approximately half the county, sorry if I'm rambling, but half the county drains to these sinkhole watersheds that don't drain to surface rivers and streams. So what we're asking for that is to get some more dye tracings to know where these sinkholes are interconnected and where they come out. So fortunately, the mayor did leave that part in the budget.
Are there any maps associated with that dye tracing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. The city has a wonderful map of just dye tracings that the county and city have paid for, and they've got it all together. And I'll send you a link to that.
I'd like to see it.
Yes, sir.
Please do. Part of my interest is, as a volunteer firefighter, we helped with those dye tracings by putting water into the system, and with the dye, and of course, they did their research from there. Interesting.
It is very interesting.
Okay. Heard the request from the stormwater. Are there any changes recommended? Hearing none, we'll accept the mayor's recommendation. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
We'll be moving to the next
Chairman.
one.
Thank you, Commissioners.
County buildings, Adam.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, while Adam's making his way up here, we've gone in and since Mr. Mankin left and Adam's come in, come on up, Adam, and I'll let me start off by saying we went in and kind of overhauled this budget for Mr. Dodd. I'll let him share with the committee how many buildings he actually is now responsible for, how many are coming on board with the new buildings that we are under construction with. I think it's a very conservative budget, but we've also, if you'll recall, ambulance had their own maintenance guy. Fire rescue had their own maintenance guy. EMS, they actually had a paramedic making $70-some-odd thousand, $80,000 a year, mowing grass, changing light bulbs, etc. So we felt like that now that he needs to go back being what he was hired to do, is being a paramedic and saving lives, as opposed to changing light bulbs, mowing the grass. I know it was easy for him, but at the same time, we have a maintenance department that their whole purpose is maintenance. And so in talking with EMS, talking with Fire and Rescue, both directors felt fine with taking some of their budget line items and combining and giving to Mr. Dodd, letting him be totally responsible. We've got him in a new location over on Haley Road, and they've got a new computer system. Well, a computer system now they have figured out how it works, that they've had for some time. They can schedule, when work orders come in from different departments, whether it be Mrs. Kroll's office or at 319 or wherever it may be. They'll come in, print out a work order. Everybody, Mr. Dodd will assign, he and Mr. Shue will assign every maintenance person what they need to be doing, but we've also added some different positions for him as well in order to keep up, because as you know, that deferred maintenance costs governments tons and tons of money after the fact if we defer it. So the main thing with his department is staying on top of it, and I've been quite pleased with everything that Mr. Dodd has done since he's been in this position. So, Director Dodd, if you will.
You want to?
Yeah, there's an addition of $470,000, 470,042, and that is he is creating an administrative assistant 2, 3 maintenance techs, 1 journeyman electrician, 1 HVAC tech, and the 1 ambulance tech moved to 101.
That is correct. Does the committee have any questions concerning the budget?
So what is that? How many positions is that? 7, 6?
It's 6 maintenance techs and 1 administrative position.
And the other, what you said, ambulance and fire?
Yeah.
They'll be taking over the maintenance for those 2 entities.
So they're taking those buildings, and like you said, we moved 1 body, and we also moved money from fire.
Both budgets.
Yeah,
Out of those budgets into his.
into his.
So,
All right.
you got that?
Give everybody a moment to digest that. Are there any questions for Director Dodd? Adam, how you like your job so far?
It keeps me busy.
I'd say it would, especially this time of year with the grass growing. So, committee's had a chance to look at this. Are there any recommendations for change? Hearing none, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation and move on. Thank you, Mr. Dodd.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next up is archives. Total.
Chairman,
Welcome.
we accept the mayor's recommendation as presented. It's pretty much a carryover budget, minus, as everybody said, the question about staff increases, but everything else is a carryover budget.
Heard the request. Do I hear any questions from the committee? No recommendations for change. Hearing none, we'll accept the mayor's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Lovell.
Yeah.
Okay, next is risk management. Mr. Elam. Welcome, Ed.
Good evening. So I'll go over the changes that we look at. I'll start first with the clerical personnel. you'll see last year, this doesn't include the mayor's recommendations on raises, but you'll see last year we were at 289.20, and this year's request is at 274,765. Part-time personnel, you'll see an increase of 32.4. Overtime, you see an increase from 5,000 to 15,000. And then on the other salaries and wages, this is the safety part of it, not the benefit side, but the safety side of it. You'll see where there's 99,888, and this year you'll see it's at 96,676. I will say that what I have asked for is to move, ask for an additional personnel for this, and it's included in that amount. If you remember a couple of months ago, we restructured and we took and made a safety coordinator there, and then part of that was when Dan Good was leaving, the transition, those months that we had Dan and then somebody else training for his position. So that's what part of that was for last year. So moving that person over there, you have in this, it's not just the safety person, but they handle the property and casualty. Rutherford County is approaching, we're at $1.9 billion in property. Right now, that's between me and the safety person. Coordinator been handling most of that. So that's why we want to put a position in there to handle. They would also handle OJI. They would also handle any kind of inspections. The other thing that, and you'll see down here, I don't want to skip, but where it says travel, that's basically training too. You see an increase. My goal is to take that safety person and the safety coordinator, do additional training to where they can be able to go on site and train our employees like the 10-hour OSHA class. So to get certification, to get training, we're about halfway there with the safety coordinator for that position. But I have to have, in order for them to be able to do more training and be away, to get that certification to teach our employees that 10-hour OSHA class, I just need some more time away for her to be able to do that. I honestly believe, and I will tell you my previous experience of my previous employer, is that it's much easier to educate employees about safety than to defend the county on safety because we didn't educate them. And that's the purpose of trying to pick people in certain positions. I'm not trying to pick on maintenance or anything, but they're one of those that definitely have the exposure that I think that we need to look at doing those OSHA 10-hour classes. That's the whole part of the safety for that position. Moving on down to 348, where you see postal charges. We did, the commission adopted the Medicare Advantage plan, so we'll be sending out a lot of postage and stuff for retirees. And then also our normal postage that we have for open enrollment. A lot of people think, well, if the schools are going, then your postage may not be as much, but we still have the voluntaries on both sides. That number's still the same. It's just that the medical, dental, and vision will not be in our guides and what we send out. Underneath that, you'll see the travel that I mentioned. I really don't like, I don't mean to pick on Lisa, but I don't like where it says travel because it leaves you the impression that you're going off to seminars and that stuff. And we do just about all of ours online. So to me, it's really training comes out of that budget, travel and training, and that's where you see the increase to get that certification for the 10-hour OSHA class, the additional classes. And then as you get down to 502, building contents and insurance, this is the estimate that our broker has given us for building and contents increase, approximately 20%, and then you'll have some appraisal increase in that also because of the inflation. And our buildings, the value of our buildings are going up. So that's what part of that will be in that increase. And then our liability insurance, you see the increase there. And then also the last item, you have premiums on corporate surety bonds. It looks like a huge increase, and it is. It's just that every 4 years, we have surety bonds for the newly elected officials. And the biggest part of that is the trustee, and there's a formula, and don't ask me to spit it out to you right now. I've got it at my office, but it's all based on what he takes in, and there's a formula that we have that in order to have a bond to cover that. So that's the biggest part of the increase. This is every 4 years. Your biggest part is every 4 years, and this was the year with the new elected officials. To re-up those bonds, like last year, you see there's not anybody elected, so every now and then you'll see like a road board member or somebody like that come on if someone resigned. So that's pretty much it.
Ed, I've got a quick question while the committee's pondering their questions. You mentioned we had 1.9 billion in property now for the county. Is that
Yes, sir.
including our schools?
That's schools, that's every building, that's every piece of property here.
State looks at ownership of schools a little bit different. That's what brought that question on. So, committee, any questions for Mr. Eagle? Hearing no recommendations for change, we're going to also accept the mayor's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Elam.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the trustee. Beatty, we want to hurry him through. He's not used to having to wait. Yeah.
Good evening. Our budget, we don't have any new positions. I'll get to the major change in just a moment. Most of the changes on that are printing and mailing cost, just with inflation and growth. So there's a little bit of changes in those. And then the largest change would be in item line 52,400,540, which is the tax relief program. And that's our matching funds. That's not that all the implementation is in the rest of our budget. That's the money that the county matches. And the county matches the state tax relief $2 for every $1 the state pays, up to a total match of $306. So that's where that number, and we've had lots of new applicants, lots of new veteran applicants this year, and then with the reappraisal, lots of folks are questioning now, we want to get on the tax freeze, so our phones have been ringing off the hook to get on freeze and relief, so we just, that number is just to cover that match.
A very conservative budget, and I really appreciate you bringing up the reappraisals, because my phone's also been ringing off the wall about this reappraisal, and first thing I mentioned to them is they need to give you a call, so excuse me for piling on for you, but
they have been.
Well, I'm
which
glad
is
that
good.
y'all-
I mean, it's good.
Well, that's
because
why
we try to communicate, but it doesn't always get out there. So this is a good time for people to check, and some of them will not qualify because there is an income limit on those programs, but many of them do.
The income limit on that is set by the state, and I think that's the medium income for the county. If you match that or below,
Median income of those homeowners, 65 to 74 in the county for freeze, and the relief would be a little under that. But that's where that number, and it does adjust every year for inflation. So that number does increase. I think
Chairman
the number
Peake.
for this year is $44,920.
Mr. Piercy.
Would it be out of the ordinary to ask Mr. Beatty and Mr. Mitchell to attend our full commission meeting Thursday night and maybe give some explanation on how these reassessments come about and the programs they could do to get some relief somehow, because it's a hot topic.
It is. It is. I mean, we can request Mr. Beatty to attend our meeting. I don't know if Mr. Mitchell's still here,
He left.
but we can certainly send a request.
As far as I know, I can be here and would be glad to.
So you or Mark can get that added to our agenda we'll make that request. We appreciate that, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you.
Now, having said that, are there any specific questions about Mr. Beatty's budget? Hearing none, we'll accept the mayor's recommendation, and thank you, Mr. Beatty.
Thank you. I'd like to make one comment, if I may, and I'll make it Thursday, so everybody's clear. If a resident is not on the tax freeze today, if their first year is to come in this year and apply, then their base year will be 2022. So it will be whatever the taxes are this fall, starting in October. So we can't come in and sign up today and not participate in the October. It will be the October. But for those that are on freeze, if their taxes go down, then their taxes will go down and refreeze at the lower amount. But so if you get that call that says, my appraisal went up, I don't want my taxes to go up, that whatever we do now, this year will become what we call the base year. So that's already will be in play.
I appreciate you addressing that because I've had that specific question asked. So
It comes up, we don't want people to be disappointed. I mean, we want to be really upfront with people about what we can do.
Yeah, my answer has been, I don't know, call Ted.
Well, they can still call us, but that is the answer.
Well, I know what to tell them now. Thank you, Ted.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. So we've accepted his budget, and we'll move on to the next, which is the county clerk, Ms. Lisa. Welcome.
Thank you. So it seems like everybody's going through and explaining everything, so I can do the same. Let me get over here where I can go. Line item 307 is remaining the same as of last year. Line item 317 is a small increase, which is what is charged by our vendors, which is BIS and Tensis, and those are for our software programs that we use in our offices. One is for the motor vehicle, and the other one is for probate. Okay, data processing services. Sorry, I'm a little off. It's a long line across there, isn't it? Okay, operating lease payments, which is $330. There is an increase. What that is about is we're adding a new Blackman office. So some of these fees are going to reflect the increases that you see. So this would be for postage machine usage. Maintenance agreement, which is $334. It is the same as last year. That is for the alarm system, and it's also for BankPack. BankPack is who operates and takes care of our equipment at the drive-through windows. 336, maintenance and repair of equipment. That will be the same as last year. We have to pay for those things that go down, such as BankPack, or we still have the old Electrevers. We have those maintenance once a year. They're so old. It's like changing the oil in your vehicle. It keeps them moving smoothly so that we don't have to replace them. Maintenance and repair to a vehicle, I have $500, which is the same as last year. This one is going to be the big jump in increase is the postage. If you'll remember, I was here just a few months ago asking for an increase in postage, and that's due to all the license plates that we're mailing out at $4.80. With the increase of people moving in, the registrations, online services, it is just increased by that amount, and it's going to take it in order for us to continue doing that, and we have to do this. The next one, other contracted services, it did decrease some. What that is we do hotel motel audits. and we partner with the city on that. So it decreased because a couple of the towns won't be partnering with us this time, but will step in next year. Data processing supplies, as you'll see, there is an increase. Again, it goes hand in hand with the postage. We have an increase of people coming in. We have to print those registrations. Increase in paper and ink and all that goes with that. Plus, we're getting ready to open that third office. So some of these increases will reflect that we're also going to be stocking that as well. Gasoline is $3,000. It's the same as last year. Office supplies, again, there's an increase, and that's to help to stock the new location in Blackman. Other office supplies is the same as last year. You'll see another increase in line item 709, which is data processing equipment. Again, that increase is because we are going to purchase a new indoor-outdoor kiosk with 24-hour service, and that will be for the new Blackman location.
Where did you say that'd be?
At the Blackman location. And office equipment, again, there's an increase I've got in there for a new copier for the new Blackman location. And I agree with the mayor's recommendation.
Lisa, I would say the 5 new positions.
Oh, yes. I'm asking for 5 new positions. And we discussed this, and what we need to do is go on and hire 2 at the beginning of this next budget year. And then the other 3 we will hire when the third location is open. And that way, what will happen is we'll have a new position at each location so that we can spread out the knowledge between the 3 locations.
Mr. Chairman, I want to commend Ms. Kroll for doing that. When she first brought the budget, we had it plugged in to give her all 5 at one time on the recommendation, but we called her back. We were trying to pare down the budgets, and she stepped up and agreed to go with 2 now, so you can get them trained, and then 3 starting in January, I believe, after the first of the year, because the building's under construction, so there was no need to go ahead and fund that fully for those 3 positions. So thank you for doing that, Lisa.
Lisa, are you still doing security on the?
That'll be in my budget.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
And I might add, being that it's been brought up, it truly makes a difference in correcting the problem that we had. So that's a good thing that we have that.
I was looking for it in yours, why I asked, so all right, thank you. Okay, you've heard the request. Are there any questions for Lisa? Hearing none, we'll accept the mayor's recommendation. Thank you. Okay, next is the Geographic Information System. Mr. York, welcome. I've been trying to keep up with all the changes I've been seeing from public safety and the different departments, so, we'll see.
That's a lot to keep up with.
Well, it is, but there's a lot of changes for several of these departments that you're picking up, so.
Mr. Chairman, before Mr. York gets started, let me just preface by saying Mr. York really stepped up. We were looking at well over $1 million increase. I asked him to go back in and pare it down. Now, he says that he can't do it again next year, but out of all the different departments, he really stepped up and pared it down to what is before you today, and without harming his department. So certainly appreciate you doing that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Chairman, Committee, we worked diligently with the Mayor's office and was able to get our overall budget to be just slightly below the previous year budget, and then that's without the 15%. The 15% bumped it up, but but yeah, that's where we got the budget. So obviously, there's a lot of changes in those line items, but the total budgets, less the 15% increase, was slightly below last year's recommendation for GIS. And I'll answer any questions you have, or try to, anyway.
I'll do GIS since he's here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were on GIS. Is that it? Is that not right?
Well, we kind of doing
Yeah,
GIS.
GIS is the one that we're doing
Yes.
now, and then
Yeah.
the next one will be
Information technology.
information technology.
Good with both of them?
Yes, we're good with both those.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. Will you talk to us about line 799? You'd requested 605, and we've approved 353, and that's a jump from the previous year of 255.
Yes. So to remind you, we have let me pull up so the original request included LiDAR, which is when you fly over and you use LiDAR, so it's kind of like radar but using light. And that's something we were due to do that this year. But after consulting with Mike, and we made the determination that we could probably push that for 1 year. Now, that's one of the things that I mentioned to the mayor in our conversations, is this is one of those things that we can push a year and we can make it work, but really needs to be done next year. So that is included in that number. And that was budgeted for over $250,000 is the LiDAR. So that's a big chunk of that request that turned into that we were able to cut. But it will be back next year. It kind of has to be. We also decided to roll our drones. So we have really kind of a couple of drone systems, and those are due to be replaced, but we're going to replace the batteries instead of replacing the full drones. Again, that's another thing that the clock's ticking. So the FAA requirements for drones of the size that we fly require electronic beacons, and that's a new regulation that we've known about for a while, but it goes into effect in the coming years. So we're going to have to retire our drones and buy replacement drone systems at some point. But those two things make up the bulk of that money. We were also able to use some money left over in the budget this year to purchase some additional hours with a consulting company, True North, and we were able to cut an expense out of the budget for next year. So that explains the difference between the request and the mayor's recommendation. Also in 399 right now is really two things. Planimetrics, which is that's what we do when you take the data that comes from the flyover that the property assessor's office does, and then we have to process that data and get it put into GIS. And then the second expense, and that's $180,000. The second expense is almost the same thing, 175 or 173, and that is our imagery that we fly every year. And I'm sure you guys remember this, but that planimetrics is done once every 2 years, but we cut it in half just to level the budgets. So this is half of the planimetrics cost, because they fly every 2 years. We fly every year.
Make sure I understand that. Are we sharing that cost with the municipalities that we share this information with?
Yes, we do.
We're actually looking at the geographic information systems and information technology. Are there any questions for Cody?
Did that answer your question? Okay.
Any further discussion? we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation. Thank you, Mr. York.
Oh, and on the data processing, there is 2 new positions that, one of which is a website graphic artist, graphic designer, and that's to basically provide additional creative support to our creative team that we manage. And then the other position is a senior systems engineer. And that is basically a position that would allow us to plan ahead. We are busy dealing with the fires and the things that are happening every day, and we lack the capacity to plan ahead and figure out what's the problem 6 months from now or a year from now that we're going to be facing. So we're staying busy handling the problem of today, and we're not thinking about the problem of tomorrow. And that's my goal for that position, is to hire someone who has a high enough experience and expertise in complicated systems, networks, software, to be able to say, okay, this is the person that's going to help us not have some of the problems or have solutions ready when those problems come up.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the Pet Adoption and Welfare Services. Mr. Gregory. Welcome, Michael.
Good evening. We do accept the mayor's recommendation. The only salary changes that we have is we did ask for an additional animal control officer. Our goal is to try to get 2 officers that would work overnight shifts to try to make on-calls better for the officers that we currently have. And then we had discussed, and the budget includes funding an additional full-time veterinarian for 6 months of the year. We had discussed some succession planning with as difficult as it is, and the veterinarian shortage that is being experienced across the country. We wanted to make sure that we were trying to stay ahead of that somewhat. If something were to happen to our current veterinarian, if we're not able, we'll post that position if it's approved, but we will only expend that money if we're able to hire someone.
For me, just a reminder to the committee, you went ahead and advanced approved 5 of the positions that were showing as new.
That's what I was going to ask. Mike, has that seemed to help so far? Do you think it's going to help?
We've been able to fill 3 of the kennel attendant positions. My bigger concern now are the 4 vacant officer positions and the length of time needed to train them. So I'm encouraged if the 15% goes through, that's definitely going to help with, hopefully, with recruitment. It's going to put us up much closer to where we need to be. So I'm hoping that will be able to, something will be able to be done there to help try to get additional applicants. That's the biggest concern now.
Commissioner?
Your animal foods and your drugs that you have to acquire, are you getting those on a wholesale level?
Every year we bid out our drugs and medical supplies. That was actually turned into Laura in the mayor's office, and that will be bid out sometime in June. We do that on a yearly basis for all the major drugs and stuff that we're using. Our animal food, we actually work with Hill Science Diet. We're on their shelter program, so we receive shelter discount for that. And that's where all of our food comes. So it's a very minimal cost there. But we try to do everything we can to bid things out to get the best price that we can.
The bidders, are they usually wholesale people or just
we work
or
direct.
are they like Co-op Tractor Supply or something?
No, sir. For our drugs and medical supplies, we're working with major companies that sent out to Zoetis, which is an animal pharmaceutical company, Covetrus, which used to be Henry Schein. They do dental stuff. They also have an animal division. We work with Midwest Veterinary Supply. It also goes out to Patterson Veterinary Supply. So we're working with those distributors to try to get the best rate on those things. As part of that bid, we also include in there the cleaner that we use in the shelter is called Rescue. It's specific towards animal facilities. We also throw that on that drugs and medical supply bid because they come from those same distributors to make sure that we're getting the best price we can on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
To add to that on some of the other stuff as far as the cleaning things as well, we'll piggyback off of other bids that are put out there. So we're looking at state contract all the time as well as any other department. That was something when Mayor Ketchner came in that we started doing more intensely. I've even purchased some of the stuff using the Board of Education's bid just to try to get the best pricing we can.
Michael?
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind, as you continue to struggle trying to get animal pickup, runaways, et cetera, could you share with the committee and whoever's watching on TV the struggles? Some people said, well, just go to the workhouse and get some inmates to come and, work and et cetera. Explain to them that not allowed to because you have drugs on the premises, right?
Yes, sir. I can assure you that when it comes to our staffing shortage, Sonia and I have looked at everything that we possibly could to think outside of the box. So if you can think of it, trust me, we probably have already been 2 steps ahead of you. When it comes to having inmates, we had looked, Sonia, I would say it was probably 4 or 5 years ago that we checked into this. It was back when the workhouse started their, and I'm not sure the exact terminology, but basically where the inmates go out and work at private companies, and then when he comes in to help offset their expenses at the workhouse. And then I remember there was a story in the Daily News Journal where one of the inmates had left the facility with a nice chunk of change and talked about how it was going to change his life. And I thought, well, that could be great. It would give us a steady supply of employees each day, 7 days a week, and I know they would show up. And it would also help the county and help try to get them back out into the real world. But there were issues there regarding us having a veterinarian and having those controlled substances in our building. Even though those are handled appropriately, Doc and I go to extremes when it comes to the controlled substances. The euthanasia drugs that we use are under my name, and I'm very concerned to make sure that those things are handled correctly. The drugs that are used back in the veterinary staff area, that's her license. And to say we're type A when it comes to those things would be an understatement. So we want to make sure that we're careful there, but it still was something that we weren't allowed to do. Some of the other things that have been thrown out, a lot of various things, but we have to look at things from a safety aspect as well. It's not our position, even though it seems that someone could just come in and they could clean a cage, that's great, they could do that, but our things have to be done to a certain level and protocol has to be followed. If a cage is not cleaned correctly today, then we open up the entire shelter and the entire population for disease, and we have to kind of look at a herd management system versus more an individual. The other thing is the safety aspect that goes into that. Our folks, when they hire in, they go through an orientation process that we do in-house. Part of that is they go through a program called Fear Free for Shelters. And we really have put, and I would say the last 2 years, a huge emphasis on stepping up employee safety. So me bringing in someone off the street and not going through those things opens up the county, opens up us to a lot of different safety and liability issues. So we're doing everything we can to get back to where we want to be. The decisions that we've had to make over the last 6 months were not decisions that we wanted to do, but it has been decisions that for us to even keep the doors open, we had to. I know they've not been popular with the public. They've not been popular in our office. I'm sure they've not been popular because I know some of you all have been getting phone calls regarding that, but it's where we had to be to try to keep going. I feel that there's some light at the end of the tunnel, and I told one of my staff members, I don't think it's the oncoming train, but I think we're ahead of where we were even 30 days ago, but we still have a long ways to go. And it's going to take some time to get back fully to where we need to be. Those 4 officer positions, if I were able to hire those today, and they actually showed up on their start date, which has been an issue a lot here lately, I wouldn't have them to where they could be on their own until probably at least the beginning of August, and that's if everything worked perfectly. And we're down 4 out of 12 right now. Does that answer your question, Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Well, I think most of us are aware we've had some critical problems out of your department, mostly because of manpower. And I concur, having worked with veterinarians, the policy, state and federal requirements for keeping drugs on your location are very restrictive, and all veterinarians have to adhere to the same rules and regulations. Sonia?
It had been mentioned, I don't know if it's on or not, had been mentioned in the Public Safety Committee that potentially we could look at doing a sign-on bonus. And one of the things, and I don't know that this body, wants to do that, but one of the things that we considered as I was researching and evaluating other agencies who do sign-on bonuses is that if we did do something like that is, let's say if we did $1,000 sign-on bonus and we say, okay, if you stay for 90 days you get $250, and you stay another 90 days and you get $250. So instead of giving them the sign-on bonus at the beginning, give it to them in stretches to ensure that they continue, might be one example that we could use in order to encourage more applicants. As far as it goes to what Michael was speaking to about not being able to use the inmates, when we researched that, it would be, they would not let us do it. They said that they would shut us down. If we ever had another facility where the animals could be housed and the surgeries only took place in one area, we could then do it there. It's just the fact that it's got on-site medications that the doctor has to use to put the animals to sleep and other things. So if ever we were to have another location where some animals were kept or something like that, obviously the inmates at that point would not be subject to those things. And that was one of the things that they mentioned. And I know Michael's expressed some growth pains in the past about needing extra space. So that's something that you might consider, that might be a way to assist with staffing using the inmates in that other location to help offset. So that's just some ideas.
Thank you, Sonia.
Chairman, if I may add, we're not the only animal control going through this, trust me. I've been speaking with Metro several times. They're actually, percentage of staff vacancies, they're worse than we are, so that gives me, I guess, some hope. But today, we had a few directors get together there at the shelter just for a brief meeting, and I spoke with one of the bigger counties to our west and asked, how many are you down? And they were down 5 full-time positions, and they said, I couldn't even tell you how many part-time positions I'm down. So I think we were heading in the right step by changing those part-time positions to full-time. It has allowed me to hire, like I said, those 3 people since that change was made around a month ago. So I just hope that continues.
Of course, being on public safety, I've heard a little more than what y'all probably heard as far as some of the woes we've had at our Paul's facility. But I think he's done a very good job, as well as he can, overcoming some of these problems, or trying to. And y'all have heard his request. Are there any changes anyone would like to make? Seeing none, we'll accept the mayor's recommendation, and thank you for your hard work, Michael.
All right, thank you all. Have a good night.
Okay, next is the Solid Waste and Sanitation Fund. Mr. Wagner, welcome. The guy we try to keep pretty busy too.
As he's handing out this amendment, just an overview, estimated revenue for the entire fund is $7,280,000. There is no property tax in this fund. The mayor's recommendation on appropriations is $8,147,223. So we would use fund balance of $867,000, but there is sufficient funds in their fund balance to take us into next year.
I agree with the mayor's recommendation on my budget. Would you like me to address the amendment for this current budget first, or the?
That's fine. That's fine.
I've handed you all a piece of paper requesting a budget amendment. It is moving funds from line 724 into line 711. This will accommodate us to be able to purchase office furniture. We're moving from the Armory, 1220 West College location to the 6000 Landfill Road location, and we'd like to have some office furniture when we go.
Since this is a request to move funds, I am going to ask for a motion on this particular issue. I have heard his request, Commissioner Dodd.
What will be at the Armory?
That will be, those offices there will belong to EMA after we leave. That's correct, isn't it, Mayor?
That's correct.
And your site development has that $7,000 cushion. Do you feel comfortable that
Yes,
you won't be motion to approve?
I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hear none, call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Aye.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner Allen? I'm sorry, Commissioner Peak?
Yes, motion carries. That Wagner, now let's get back to your budget.
Yes. As you can see plainly, this is a budget increase of over $2 million from last year. Primarily, the big items on this are I'm requesting 14 full-time convenience center attendants, one for each of the locations, and 14 part-time convenience center locations, of course, one for each of the convenience center locations. We intend on extending the hours from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., whereas we will need staff that can be there full-time and enough part-time staff to make sure that they're appropriately covered, as well as the 4 new convenience centers that we're building, the size increase of them, having some available attendants there on site to be able to staff that better, to be able to accommodate the citizens' needs. That's what that request is about.
Can I interject right here, just so we can clear up?
Yes.
It was kind of confusing for Public Works, but so for y'all, if you would look at under convenience centers, 149 laborers, this is the line that we were putting the part-time people in. When the request came to put the 14 full-time, that's where they're now will be residing. So 149 is changing from part-time people to full-time. And then when you look down to 169 and see that the budget was $39,683, jumping to $649,780, that's the move of the part-time that was in laborers and has moved to that line. So part-time is really part-time, and laborers are now full-time.
Also in that same account, we have 2 other large items, which together these 4 items basically make up the increase over last year. By and large, it's going to be line 718. That's a request for $585. That's for the purchase of 3 roll-off collection vehicles. And line 733 is solid waste equipment. That's for the purchase of the high-capacity compactors, also called super packers. I anticipate the high-capacity compactors will, within 4 years, save the county money on purchase, with reducing the amount of material we'll have to haul and reducing the amount of open-top containers that we'll have to manage. I feel that this is an investment in the future of being able to manage solid waste as we continue to grow.
Mayor Ketchum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, I would just strongly suggest supporting Mr. Wagner's request. Out of the last two departments, this department and the previous department with animal control are probably the two departments that you as a commissioner will get more calls over, with stray dogs, dog issues, and we just recently saw it in Bishop's department when he actually, because of, we had several of your part-time people came down with COVID, and you had to temporarily shut one or two of the convenience centers down. And when your wife gives you trash to take the convenience center and you come back home with it, it's not pleasant. And those when the phone calls occur. But what bothers me even more is some people won't bring you back home. They'll go out in the country and find some place, and that's one of the problems we're having that's exploding all across the county with our tremendous growth. So I think Bishop's got a good plan of trying to go with 2 part-time people at each location and 1 full-time person to where they're totally manned to take the trash, and it's just going to continue to get larger and larger as our population continues. Thank you.
Quick question. Your hours you stated would be 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. Is that how many days per week is that?
That would be the 5 days per week currently.
Okay, so we'd still be shut down on Thursdays and Mondays?
Mondays and Thursdays, yes, sir.
Okay.
Well, some counties shut down on Sundays. I don't recommend that at all, because that's really the only time. If you're going to put the C letter back in the word convenience, that's when people have time off, is on the weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
We do have some issues with our Sunday collection, which is pretty common in Public Works meeting. However, I feel that extending the hours through the week will make this more convenient and will remove some of the stressors that we currently have in collecting on the weekends. I feel that more citizens will be able to take their waste to a convenience center during these hours, and hopefully we'll see less volume during the weekend and be able to manage it better.
Now, your request for these double capacity compactors, that's what I'll call them. Maybe that's not a good term, but we just okayed out of Public Works 3, we allowed you to move some money that was allocated for a machine and allowed you to buy 3 or as many as you could get, and I assume 3. Will this request, how many more will that pick up, and will that give one for each one of the convenience centers?
I anticipate with this request I'll be able to get 4 to 5. I'm in the process of negotiating the price on the 3 that I was approved off the budget amendment that I made from this last year. So the overall impact, I believe, will put us in a position where we're going to have enough to go and have a good model for a few years to come, and then we can reevaluate in I would say at least 2 more budget years whether or not we want to add more to this or if this is going to be sufficient.
Now, another question, of course, I've got 2 more guys here that's on the same committee with us. The vehicles that you currently have, will they haul these higher capacity?
Yes, Chair, they will haul the compactors. Everything fits the same size. Sometimes we still get containers that are close to that in the open top when we haul steel that are close to some of the weights that we'll be dealing with there. There may be some maintenance issues that we might have to address, like beefing up the cable tensile strength and things of that nature. That would be normal activities in maintenance. The new vehicles that I'm requesting, the specs that I'm putting on those new vehicles would include the requirements to haul the heavier packers as well.
One last thing, and I'll stop drilling you here. Will you be able to install these on the existing sites without removing the old ones, or are you planning on removing the old ones, or these are additions to?
They will be on this site, so if we're talking about two things here, for one, because the three that we've got are going to go on existing sites, on existing pads. The ones that I've got in this budget, I'd like to have on the new centers that we're building. And then if I can get an extra one out of the deal to go somewhere else, it'll go on an existing pad. There is one pad that I'm going to have to repair. It's in disrepair right now. It's out at Almaville. That's the center compactor there, which I anticipate with the ones that were approved earlier or last week. I would like to fix that pad there and put one there, and we've got money in the budget to deal with that too.
Okay, thank you.
Where is there one of these high-capacity compactors being used now?
Bedford County has them used in their convenience centers. They're the closest. Marshall County, I believe, has also ordered some. One of the things that struck me immediately upon going to Bedford County is they don't have open tops any longer at their facility. The ones that they have out there collect their recycling containers. In speaking with their director, Mr. Clanton said that he was surprised with their ability to remove that necessity from them. And that's where I believe our savings and maintenance, wear and tear on our vehicles, less trips to the landfill, and just our overall collection ability will increase. Is in the fact that a lot of the material that is currently going into the open top containers will be placed in these high capacity compactors, effectively smashed, and where an open top hauls, roughly 2.5, 3.5 tons on a heavy open top. We're talking about 18.5 to 21 tons in these other containers, so it'll quickly add up to the reduction in hauls that we'll have to take.
Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, we went down, made a road trip about 2 months ago, I guess it was, to Bedford County, met with County Mayor. He showed us those new compactors are actually made in Chapel Hill, Tennessee. They're in northern Marshall County. But, I mean, this guy pulls up, gets an old recliner, gets it out back of his truck, puts it in there. The walls are much thicker, and put the recliner in there, it just crammed it in. Another guy pulls up and had a king-size mattress and threw it in there. And it took him a couple of times because part of it was sticking out, and when he backed it up, it sprang back out. And so I just said that was good memory foam, but he was able to cram it in there. And like Bishop said, there's no more open tops at those locations. And it's got two cylinders as opposed to one that rams it in there. So there's two, right, compressors?
That's correct. And I just realized that the compactors that we remove, we will use those compactors as well as additions to centers as centers grow. I've got a couple centers that could actually take another compactor. I believe Craner Road would be a center that I think could take another compactor, smaller capacity compactor, to give a little bit of lead time. Right now we've got several single packer centers that are, I go into garbage lingo, single compactor centers, compactor receiver setups that will, we could accommodate a second if we had one there. Might take a little bit of shifting around, and with the removal of the majority of the open tops, that'll allow us for some more space as well. So I think that it will give us some, and we'll have infrastructure on the ground that I don't plan on surplusing. I plan on utilizing every bit of equipment that we can to maximize our collection and disposal abilities throughout the county.
Does it make the garbage harder to get out?
No, in fact, the reports, I've actually have a driver on staff that's PRN that works for Bedford County and has used these. He's actually agreed to train my guys because there's a little bit of difference in the collection and disposal aspect of it, and he was tickled when I called them and told them that we had the approval for that, because it does make life a lot easier on them and collection. Because you have more pressures, when you open up that door, it just kind of pops out.
Is it harder to keep in it when you take it away from the compactor site? Or does the compactor go with it?
No, so the compactor will compress it, and the way that it compresses it is a little bit different. It goes a little deeper inside of the compactor, so where the ones that we're utilizing now, when they reach their maximum pressures, they start to bulge out on the outside. These will actually get pressed hard enough that they kind of stick in there. Now, there's some methods that how you place material in there helps that to happen, so that'll be a bit of the learning process as we go in there, but from all reports that I'm getting there, they work great.
The reason I'm asking so many questions, we've studied this garbage thing for endless, and we should be at a point where we're getting ready to make some type of motion forward. And I would hate to see us invest somewhere around $1 million in heavy-duty compactors that might not be of use to us. That's the reason I'm questioning on it. Me personally, I voted the other night for you to get the 3 or 4. I was a little leery getting 4 at one time. I'd rather have one, make sure it worked, and then get 3 more. Now, I'm really leery on getting 4 or 5 more on top of the 4 before we see these installed and make sure they're going to be beneficial for us. That's the reason I'm questioning this. I'm not giving you a hard time. I just want to be thorough on it.
And I'm sure I could arrange, we could go down to Bedford County too if you wanted to see the same demonstration that we were showing up there. I would invite all of you to come out there, and I'm relatively new around most of you getting to know me. I rarely get excited about stuff like this. I'm a pretty big cynic when it comes to magic fixes, when it comes to managing garbage. I'm a firm believer that these are going to be a very valuable asset to Rutherford County's collection.
So you're one of these guys that get excited talking about trash.
Yes, I am a garbage nerd.
Our committee has run into several people that fall into that category. And as Commissioner Piercy mentioned, we'll be making some decisions, but, these are some problems that have been weighing on us for many years. Anything else you'd like to add about your budget or?
Nothing comes to mind. If there are any questions, though, of anything that you've read, I'm happy to answer anything.
Commissioner Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have more of a general statement, or maybe not a question for Mr. Wagner, but I've said for several years that we probably ought to start shifting a little bit of property tax into this fund to help it balance, because the fund balance is dwindling. And when that landfill closes, our costs are going to go up significantly. And if we don't have any money in this fund, it's going to be very difficult in the middle of the budget year to come up with whatever it takes to solve our problem. So we might want to consider that this year, is come up with a 5-year or 10-year plan on what we would like to shift into this to help it balance, because it's going from $5.5 million to $4.5 million this year. At this rate, the fund balance is going to be gone in 4 years.
Well, I think what you're saying is really the elephant in the room. And it's not just that. At the end of the year, if our request from our regional committee goes through, I don't yet know what our cost, none of us know what our cost may go to.
Well, the cost is coming, and we need to do something to get ready for it. Otherwise, we're handing the next commissioners a really big mess. And so as far as I'm concerned, I'd rather put money into this than build up our fund balance to make the comptroller happy, because this is something that we're actually going to have as a big problem.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Okay. Any other discussion or questions about this budget as presented? Is there a motion to make any changes, additions, or subtractions? I'll remind everybody, all of these that we're approving right now or accepting can be revisited at any time. Hearing no recommendations for change, we'll accept the mayor's recommendation on these. Thank you, Bishop.
Thank you all.
All right. Let's talk about debt service. Ms. Lisa.
Okay, our estimated revenue for debt service, again, this has property tax in it, so whenever we get the new certified rate along with the assessments, that revenue should improve. But right now, we're showing revenue at $55,808,644. Expenditures at $56,186,956. That's showing that we are using only $378,312 of fund balance. With this presentation, our fund balance in the debt service fund is $84.3 million. This budget does not have anything in it for a new debt. We've been talking about the schools and adding on. So right now, there is nothing in there. I guess I'm just trying to paint you a picture. We spoke with Mr. Broderick today to see what the plan was, and we're not expecting to get bids are on their plan, opening bids in September, October. So you're not going to know till then how much they're going to need. If I were to estimate anything right now, broad picture, again, off the ceiling picture, $75 million. That's about 5.6 million, just estimate about what the debt service would be to pay for that 75 million. But if we borrow it toward the end of the year, you're only paying half that, only interest for a half a year. It would be the next year that you're budgeting for both principal and interest. So looking at 2.8 million possibly dropping in. I'm just telling you that because if this is kind of where we're going, it's not saying that you're going to do it, you're not going to pick what particular school. I'm just kind of giving you some broad pictures that putting it 2.8 million in there, shows that we will be using that much more of fund balance, but you're still within 70% fund balance, so you'd be okay for a year. Now, overall, our debt at the beginning of this fiscal year is $485,150,000. We are scheduled to be paying off $38,715,000 in bonds. The schools have debt too that they run through their books, but it's really not that much. It's about $1.2 million that we would start the year, and they are scheduled to pay off $638,000. So my end of my story there is this is just our debt that we have on the books right now. It's what I've reflected as paying.
Thank you.
And we could amend it later too. I mean, I guess I would say don't move pennies out of debt service. Don't move pennies out of debt service, please.
One thing that she mentioned is we haven't came up with a specific project that we would go to issue bonds for. However, there's discussion for the 5 additions, and there's hope between many of us that we can do 3 this year, or at least start the process. And to be able to do that, of course, we don't have bids. We won't have bids till October, November. I think the later ones in November, maybe closer to December. However, having said that, we can make an estimate that possibly these additions would run around 25 million. That's basically where this 75 million number came up. If this comes through health and ed, there's an approval, say, for 75 million towards, say, 3 additions, which we don't know if that would cover it. That we might have to move back and punt. But at least that would give us a starting point. If we do that, how would that affect these numbers?
That's what I said. If I would, thinking about the timing, I would add 2.8 million for education interest as a guess, placeholder estimate. I mean, by the time we get to where we are ready to borrow, then at that point, you would know how much you're going to borrow, what you're going to do, but at least it would put something in there. Or you could wait until we could amend it when we get ready to do it.
Well, and the reason I even brought this back up is I know I've had other commissioners and, of course, people in my district talking to me about these issues, and I'd dearly like to see, you know, at least these first three, which would be Oakland, Riverdale, and Smyrna, addressed with this commission, if possible. We're going to see a lot of changes coming on, and also school board members coming on. But anyway, it's something to think about. Now, having said all that, Lisa, you got anything else to say about debt service right now?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we want to make any adjustments or any suggestions, changes, or questions for Lisa? Hearing none, we're going to accept this fund as presented and move to the next one. And Lisa, do you do the county commission or the mayor?
You can do the county commission.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Members, you'll see basically it's not a lot of difference. Your per diem and fees have gone up based on what was expended. Your Social Security, employer, Medicare, dues and memberships have seen a slight increase. Any questions?
Budget continuation.
Correct.
Are there any amendments or questions or additions, subtractions anyone would like to make? No, we're going to accept the mayor's recommendation for the county commission items. Go then to the mayor's.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. You'll see on line item 399, that's on page 2. There's an increase for other contracted services. This is where, Chairman, you were talking to Lisa about the security. Crimson did send us a letter letting us know effective July 1, their rates were increasing by the hour, $1 per hour. We're currently providing security service for here in the historic courthouse. We've got one in the garage and one at 319 that basically works traffic. People that come in for jury duty, a lot of times they'll park over and at 319, take up space for people who are getting tags. You know, once that building is built at one stop, it may not, something to be considered at that point in time, it may not be a problem as it is today because parking is now kind of a premium there. Lisa did on the position. I'm requesting one administrative assistant at the request of Dominic. You know, we have taken care of our veterans by moving the Veterans Associations all into the old maintenance building over on Rice Street, over by the MAC, or what used to be the MAC. And in the front 4 offices, we were planning on moving Dominic out of the Goldstein's building over to that building where the veterans are on Rice Street. So he'll be moving over there, and he is so inundated with the number of veterans that have been coming into Rutherford County, moving into Rutherford County with our growth. He needs an administrative assistant. So I'm requesting administrative assistant at a salary of $34,051 plus Medicare and Medicaid, or FICA, et cetera, retirement, health, and disability, to give him some assistance for our veterans here in Rutherford County. Any questions?
Everybody a moment to look at that.
When he's meeting with, you get a veteran comes in, sometimes they're going to have a little nursery or some little play area for the kids, because a lot of times an elderly veteran will come in with son or daughter and husband and wife and grandkids, and they'll need some place to sit. So when he's working with them, getting their paperwork filled out, getting them lined up with the VA hospital to where they can start receiving treatment, getting their benefits, with the federal government, et cetera, this assistant will be able to answer the phone, field a lot of the people who are now coming into that facility, and tell them just to, have a seat. He'll be with you, try to work out the scheduling for him as well. So he's really pumped about moving from this location. He's been under the stairwell over here, under the mezzanine at the Goldstein's building for, I don't know how long. Long time.
I think he kicked Terry Potter out of there when we put him in. But
yeah.
You guys have heard the mayor's request. Are there any more questions, first of all? If not, are there any motions to make a change, to add to or take away from? Hearing none, we'll accept the recommendation and move on to the Finance Department. And Lisa.
Okay. Before I get into this one, there was something I'd like to request approval of. I forgot to ask y'all in the last time we met. I've got an employee who is retiring in June 30th. So I'm moving one person up, but I would like to go ahead and fill that position that he's moving out of, so I would have two people in one position, and I'm asking permission for that. Right now, I've got that in there, but it's, I've got one vacant position that I'd like to fill, but right now I can't do both without your permission
Or Lisa,
to replace.
are you requesting a motion tonight on this particular issue?
Yes, sir.
Now, I don't see any,
There's no money. There's plenty money in the budget to fund this for
do you have an amount? So we know exactly what we'd be voting on, or as far as that would, I understand you've got the funds available.
I've got the funds. You have that, Sonia? It's today, this
Since you're
week.
wanting to go ahead and initiate this as soon as possible, I'd like for a vote, a vote to take place on this particular issue before we get into the rest of the budget.
I've had a position open all year and not being able to fill it. And so that's why there's sufficient funds to pay somebody. And then, of course, next year, the position will be vacated and everybody moves up, so.
Okay. So you're talking about a limited amount of time where you're basically going to have two people, and then that person will be fully trained.
Yes, that's the goal. So that.
Mr. Allen.
I'm like Commissioner P. Do you have a ballpark? Are we talking about? Could we?
I'm just figuring it up.
I'm thinking, is it less than $10,000? I'm trying to figure out what's the number. We don't know.
It's 74 and some change, so say
Less than 10.
$7,500 would take care of it.
She was rounding up to around 10 to add
10.
benefits.
Okay. Commissioner? Okay, so the request would be up to $10,000 to do this training. So do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve up to $10,000. If it's any different than that, I need you to bring the exact number back to the commission.
I have a motion. Do I hear a second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion? Mark, call roll.
Commissioner Allen?
Yes.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy? Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes. Okay, motion carries. All right.
Okay. Now, on my budget, I had an extra position, a new position put in as an accountant for the payroll. I was getting prepared to accept more responsibility from the schools to my department on their electronic timekeeping. I spoke with Doug Bodery today. He's making some changes in his shop that will accommodate to where I don't have to add a position. So I would like to change my request, and I'm sure the mayor will agree, to reduce the one position. So taking that out changes that number to $1,944,910. Now, the other change in this budget, because of not knowing when I'll be replaced, I did budget myself twice. One as finance director, and then also as an accountant to work, however y'all decide, a parallel plus a contract if necessary. So that is in there as well. Hopefully, by the adoption of the budget, we'll know what those numbers are going to be. And
Did your
I'll
posting
adjust.
close today?
It closed last night.
Last night?
So I leave that one as one that we might need to come back and revisit.
Well, as a matter of fact, let's bring up under other business tonight. If it's okay with the committee, we'll discuss that issue after we finish this.
Yeah, it's item number 2 on the agenda. I took care of you.
Yes, you did. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, you've heard Lisa's request. Are there any questions for our finance director? Appreciate you staying on top of the positions needed. Do I hear a motion to make any changes? Hearing none, we'll accept as presented. And we will move to item number 2. And as the mayor just stated, Lisa's position has been posted. Sonia stated, and it was taken down last night. And do you have how many applications, or any, all, or? Please come on.
I want to print out all these applications if you guys wanted me just to email them to you, but I did bring the results. So pulling all the applications that have been submitted both times, because if I recall correctly, the committee said we're going to open it back up to see if there are additional, but the other applicants were not. We did not send them what I call no thank you letters, that you're not being accepted. So when you combine the two sets, you've got a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. 3. You have 25 candidates that have applied. I went through the list for you. One of the minimum qualifications is the candidate has to have a CPA. And of the candidates that fit that category, there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 9 candidates who fit that qualification. They didn't provide their licensure, so we would have to check that. But as far as that goes, the other criteria they meet. Additionally, of those candidates, 1, 2, of the ones who do have their CPA, 4 of them do live in Rutherford County already. So I don't know, I'm asking what information you want me to send to you, if you want me to send all the applications for you to review those and do it electronically, or if you want me to make copies and put them in a packet and get those to you, I'll happily do that. I didn't want to make an assumption because it would be quite a bit of paper if we did that with all the applications and everything. I did do a grid, but it's really tiny because it's a lot of information. I'll be happy to send that to you as well, just as you have a quick reference. What this grid does is tells you all their supplemental questions that we ask that are part of the minimum qualifications, such as their degree, if they have a CPA, if they live in the county, and then it talks about one of the other things that we ask is if they have the CGFM designation, and I believe that two of the ones that applied do have that designation as well, and one of those candidates lives in the county as well. So it's got all of that information on there in addition to their details of experience, their management, you know, the size organization, the size budget they've been responsible for. So if you'll just tell me what you want, I'll see that you get that tomorrow.
Just one clarity, you said 25 applied.
I believe that's right, based on my quick count, right?
9 have the CPA, only 9 of the 25.
There was one applicant that put that they have a CPA, but they only have a high school diploma, and in order to sit for the CPA, you have to have a bachelor's degree. So I did not consider that one as a CPA because it's not possible.
Of the 9, are any of those the people who applied previously? I'm sorry if that don't.
You're fine. Let's see.
We had 3 CPAs previously, maybe.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Let's see. I remember when we posted it. So 7, 8. It looks like 8 of these are applicants from the last time. I can't remember. It may be 10. It's between 8 and 10 are the prior applicants, and of those prior applicants, 3 of those did have a CPA. 2 of them had the CGFM designation as well. You new applicants,
There are
yes.
a few new applicants with CPA.
Yes.
Are any of the applicants,
6. There are 6 new applicants with the CPA. Yes, sir.
are any of the applicants currently in a position similar that has county government background?
There was one. I believe there was one applicant like that. I'd have to go back, but if I remember correctly, because this doesn't have what job they're currently in, this just has their experience, so it doesn't have their job title. But I think after reviewing them, there was one of the applicants that currently has something kind of similar, and there are some, I will tell you that a lot of these applicants, as I said earlier, only a few of them live in Rutherford County. There were several that had governmental experience, but it was in Illinois, California, and not that, I mean, it's government, but it's not Rutherford County government or Tennessee government. There were several that worked in municipalities and counties across the country.
Okay, one thing Commissioner Allen.
Were there any who did not have the CPA that had any level of compelling experience that made you think that they should be considered?
I believe there were 2, if I'm thinking back, there's 2 or 3 that had worked for like the Department of Treasury and had done some countings as far as that goes. There were at least, I think, one other applicant from the Comptroller's office, but there were a couple from the Department of Treasury, the State Department of Treasury.
When we interviewed a few without CPA last time, right? They made the interview, or did we interview everybody?
I think y'all interviewed everybody, but one of the things is because is a minimum qualification, I would caution you that you need to be mindful that if there are applicants that have the minimum qualifications, those should be considered first. And if none of those applicants meet the criteria, then you could then go out and interview the rest. But if somebody meets the minimum qualifications for which the job was posted, I would tell you that you need to consider those first, in my mind. Y'all may decide to do something different. I'm just, Commissioner Stevens?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had a suggestion. If you could send us all the ones that meet the minimum qualifications and then your spreadsheet that you've got, maybe if all of us each pick 5 and the top 5 vote getters are the ones we interview. I'm not particularly interested in interviewing 9 people or 15 people or 25 people if there's a few that are outstanding. And that'll take weeks to do all of that. So if we could get the information, then maybe like at our next meeting, is it possible that we could each rank our top 5 and see who gets the most votes and select those for interviews one evening?
I could even set up, if it would be more convenient for you, I could set up a survey. Our new employee records maintenance system has a salary survey, not salary survey, a survey feature in there that I could send, and we could put all the applicants and you could just choose which ones you want, and then you could submit it and it would tally for you.
Is that legal, or is that going to violate the Sunshine Law if we're voting?
Yeah, I guess so. Scratch that. I was thinking, I was just thinking, yeah, I mean, I don't know the answer to that question.
I think we'll probably have to make our selections publicly at a meeting so we don't end up getting into a lawsuit for that.
That'd probably be a good idea. Probably.
Commissioner Gooch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you're saying that 9 people fit the minimum qualifications as far as having a CPA?
I believe that's 9. It's 9 or 10, yeah.
And then you said 6 of them were new as far as the other 3 or 4 we had already interviewed. My suggestion would be to go ahead and interview the new 6 ones, and then if we feel like we want to go back and re-interview someone else, we could. So that's just interviewing one more person.
And I think, based on what you're saying, if I'm looking at this correctly, I think 2 of the applicants live in Rutherford County that have the CPA, and the rest of the applicants are out of the state. So then you have, when you decide, you just need to decide, is it going to be an in-person, or are you going to let them, with the Zoom? That's what I was saying. Y'all need to decide, because with the cost of gas prices and everything else for somebody to fly here and everything, I just want you to consider that, just to be mindful of that. But yes, I'll happily send those to you. I'll send you this microscopic, or I can print this and bring it to you if you think too, because it's pretty small, but either way.
You've heard the suggestions. One thing I want to mention as far as the CPA requirement, Mark does not have a CPA degree. He could pick it up, but with his family situation, he doesn't want to go back to school. But I don't think anybody sitting here would deny that he is very qualified for this job. So I want you to be careful about saying, okay, yes, this is a requirement we've got, but I also want us to keep our eyes open. And if we see somebody that does have the qualifications, and that's why I was asking specifically, is there somebody out there that's had county government finance experience? But I agree. I mean, this is a requirement we got. I think we should look at those folks first.
Sonia, is Mark one of the applicants?
Sadly,
No.
I tried to encourage
repeatedly. Name in there.
I think many of us have done some arm twisting and some begging, and Mark's doing what he feels is best for his family. And
I will have to say, whomever gets this job will have a great asset in Mark, because I know he's great for Lisa, and they're similar but different, so whoever gets the opportunity to
Okay, who
work.
do y'all want to interview?
So-
Okay, one other thing that we'll need to look at, is if we've decided on, I'd like to see all the applicants myself, and, on your spreadsheet, just as Commissioner Stevens noted, please, the ones that are qualified, let's enumerate
Got
them
them highlighted.
first.
I color code stuff.
There you
so
go.
I'll give you a legend and tell you what it means, but you'll be able to tell.
But then, the hard part to me is going to get these scheduled, to be able to talk to these people with the busy schedule all of us have got. And if you don't mind looking at that, I personally tied up next week, so I wouldn't be able to attend a meeting.
You don't have Monday, May 16th would be the first time that you would be available to discuss who you would want to interview, and then I could schedule the interviews after. Am I hearing what y'all were requesting right? I send you all the applications, and at the next meeting, you will discuss who you want to interview. You'll pick your top 5 or 6 or whatever, and then after you do that, then I'll pick from that moving
You're
on.
talking about tying it into our meeting on the 6th. I think we've got a meeting on the 16th, don't we?
You do. Monday, the 16th, you have one at 5:30. It's a budget meeting, so if you did that at the end of the meeting like you did, right?
That's okay with the committee.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, I don't want her to leave at all, but
It-
I can do whatever you want me to. Okay. I'll bring
If you don't mind, I'd like one too, if you'd stick it in the box, but I also want an email.
Okay.
It sounds like if you want a hard copy, you need to request it, so I'm
If
good,
you don't
I'm good
mind,
with email.
I'll
Sonia,
get
why
'em
don't
to
you just put
everybody.
hard copies in all our
Okay.
boxes? That way, we can pick them up. If you're going to bring one over, you can bring 7.
That's 9 candidates will be hard copies, or thereabouts.
Well, he said he wanted to see them all, so. That's what I heard.
I'm sorry.
You said you wanted all the applications, right?
I would like to see
Okay. Does anybody
all
else
of
want them all?
Are you saying all 25, Mr.
I'm
Chairman?
talking about, send me an email with all 25, but the ones that are qualified are, what we've agreed on.
Well,
That's-
all
I'd
25.
like hard copy.
Hard copies of the ones who have the minimum qualifications. Is that what we're asking? Okay.
Okay, so we'll be discussing scheduling probably on the 16th, or as the mayor noted, and we've got placeholder in place through this budget and until we start getting somebody trained. She's not basically kicking us to the curb, which I appreciate so much. Thank you. Any further discussion on this issue? Hearing none, guys. Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
May I fill you in on just a couple of things that y'all had asked me about before, real quick? One of the things is we've been working on, my office has been working on the military. There was some confusion the way the state of Tennessee's legislature, how the wording was about some additional days. We have finished that with all county employees. We've sent that out. We've surveyed everybody. We've got their stuff. So I just want to let you know, Lisa's aware that there's going to be some money involved for this, but we're going to owe about $40,000 back to make sure that these individuals gets that information, and that will be going back to them. Of those, and I'll bring back at a future meeting so you can vote on it, but of those, some of the, two of the individuals have actually been overpaid by 112 hours, and so we may need to decide how you want to address that. We're going to reimburse the ones who were underpaid, but likewise, we may need to address those 2 individuals who were overpaid by 112 hours. So I wanted to make you aware that will be sending this up to finance so that we can get all of their time corrected and get them start going for the rest of the year. And the other part is, I believe it was Commissioner Gurley and some others questioned about considering giving bonuses for post-secondary certifications and degrees. And just coming up with some round numbers, we also conducted a survey of that between our last meeting and this one, the employees. And for the employees who participated, if we did a certificate program for $500 a year, if you had a certificate of sorts, so say you were post-certified or, and you may want to do more for that, but I'm just plugging in the numbers to see what it would cost. Associate's degree, bachelor's, master's, doctorate, any of those, if you did, if I just plugged in a number, 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 on up, it would cost about $542,500 to give a supplement because of a degree. That was one of the questions that had been asked, so I wanted to make sure that you were aware of that. The other part is, and I'll give everyone a copy, and thank you, Commissioner Allen, for pointing that out. I'm sorry that I missed it, about Hendersonville not being on the list. And then so I confirmed after the meeting that night, I went back and sent him my email and said, this was the list. It wasn't included on here. Did you miss it? And he missed putting in Hendersonville's data. While he was updating that, the city of Knoxville, he had just completed a survey with them, and they had already implemented their survey. So he went in and adjusted that. It only changed the overall by 1 point, so instead of 1%, so instead of being 85% off the median, we are now 84% off the median. And so I just wanted to give you that update to let you know, and I apologize that I missed that. So that's it.
Okay, have you presented that information to Commissioner Stevens' committee? Have y'all seen that? Okay.
What?
I assume you'll be sending that to Harris and the rest of
The steering?
steering, yes.
Okay. And I have a copy for each of you tonight as well.
Okay,
So.
okay. I just wanted to make sure they'd seen it also. So. All right.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner.
I think we need to get a plan together tonight for how we're going to take our applicants on Monday night. I really don't want to just make something up Monday night and say, here's who we're going to interview. I think it would be helpful. I'll be more prepared if I know each person's supposed to pick the top 5 or top 6. I'll look at the applications a lot more critically and be ready to do that instead of just making something up Monday night about who we're going to interview.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I mean, we're actually pretty early for a budget meeting night, so we can certainly discuss it this evening. And I agree with you. It's a good idea to set it up. One thing that I do want personally is I don't want these interviews to start before 5:30 because we've got some of our members cannot be here before then. So that's one, unless I hear an objection from you guys, that's one thing I would like to stipulate, that we interview after 5:30.
Well, I think we need to set our parameters tonight so everybody comes on the same page and prepared to do the same thing Monday night. If you're looking at all 25 applications and you're going to pick people off of those, and we're only looking at the other 9 and we're picking people off of those, it's going to skew the outcomes. I think we need to decide what our parameters are, what everyone's expectation will be Monday night for who we're going to select to move forward to interviews, and that way everybody starts out with the same base of knowledge and is prepared to do the same thing on Monday night. I think that's going to be fair for the applicants that way too, instead of us just making up a plan as we go.
Again, the reason I asked to see all of them is someone like Mark's situation. You know, I want to be able to, you know, if there's somebody that sticks out, that's why I also asked if there was someone that had direct experience with county government. And that's why I wanted to see
And
him.
you could make a stipulation. We've done that with other positions that we've had. The best candidate, sometimes somebody can have all the degrees and the certifications and the classifications and all this stuff in the world, all the education and the training, but when it comes down to actually doing it, their coworkers or supervisors would say, I don't think they're ready yet or whatever. So that's not always indicative of the person who would be a good candidate. I was just cautioning that I feel like you need to consider that. And if you decide that you are going to continue to require a CPA, you could put some stipulations in a job offer to whomever you offer it to give them time to complete that. That is not something that is uncommon to do. You know, you could say, you know, you have to get, Lisa was talking, how long does it take to get the CPA after you have to work under a CPA for how long? Outline that, because I didn't bring it with me.
It's been a while, so it depends on what the job is, whether you are working directly under a CPA. And again, it's been a while since I've looked at the rules. It used to be 2 years under direct supervision. Back in the day, I mean, I worked for a CPA firm, it would be 2 years.
But you would have had 2 years.
If I worked at the comptroller's, I mean, when I worked at the comptroller's office, it counted, so only 2 years there. But in some cases, it depended on what you were doing. It was either 5 to 7 years.
So it doesn't mean, well, I guess we just have to, that's some information I'll bring back just to make sure, so that you'll have that for your knowledge to say. And if, I'll tell you what, when I send out the email, I'll try to recap that in the email if I can find all the information. And then you'll have it.
Commissioner Johnson has a question, and then I want to go back to Commissioner Stevens.
Okay. One thing that I hear more complaints about than anything is maybe addressing the longevity policy and schedule or fees or whatever, you know, that I think that could be tweaked a little bit, and I don't think it'd break the bank.
I brought that to change the longevity from $25 to $50 will cost us $267,000 and $267.80 to change it, to raise it by $25. So,
Ms. Stevenson, did the original job application require the applicant to have a CPA?
I can't remember if it said required or preferred. Yeah, I think it says required. I'm pretty sure it did.
Required? So there's no need of Mr. Peter looking at the 25. He could not hire one of those over one that is qualified with a CPA. You'll get sued.
I think we can hire who we want to hire, but we would have to change what our requirements were.
You can't change the requirements after our application's turned in, I wouldn't think. You might have to redo it.
You'd have to change the job description and repost, right?
Mr. Stevens, have you got suggestions
Well,
on how
my
we
whole
might
thing
proceed?
was everybody needs to be doing this the same way. So if one person's considering 25 applications, and all of us need to look at 25 applications, or if we're only selecting the ones that have the CPA, then that's the ones we need to work with and be consistent. And like I said earlier, I think if everybody looks at the qualified candidates and has 5 selected Monday night that they'd like to interview, then surely we can come up with a good group of people to interview. And if we're not satisfied with any of those, then we can go back to the beginning, I guess, and start over, or we can look at the other applications that did come in. But I just want to have some kind of consistent way of doing this Monday night instead of just making it up as we go.
Well, like I said, I'm open to suggestions. If you're saying well, she's going to send this to us, so we'll have it before Monday night as far as who the applicants are and whether it's 25 or 6. You know, if this committee wants to say we're only going to interview the ones that meet the requirements, I mean, I'm fine with that. I just want to see who's out there. You know, and if I don't see somebody that I feel meets the criteria, that's why I'm asking for the 25. If there happens to be somebody like Mark hiding behind the bushes there, you know, I want to be able to say, hey, we might consider this if we're not finding an applicant that we feel fits the bill. That's the only reason I'm wanting to see him, Commissioner. So, do I hear a motion on how we proceed?
Well, I'll make a motion that we study the qualified applicants that have the CPA, and that each member selects 5 of those on Monday night at the public meeting to move forward, and the top 5 vote getters are the ones that we schedule for interviews.
I have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand what this motion means? Commissioner Gooch.
Since we're kind of voting on an official motion, I guess if we're going to choose 5 and there's 6 new ones, I think that we all may agree, maybe we don't, that the ones that we've already interviewed, that we wasn't satisfied enough to go ahead and hire them. So I would personally like to hire or interview the 6 new ones. And it's just one more than the 5. But I don't know if your motion will allow us to do that. Come Monday, we're going to be picking 5 instead of 6.
Well, or even the same 6. I mean, that's the whole purpose. We have a vote, and the top 5 advance, so that might be all new ones. It might be some of the ones that were interviewed before. Even if you do 6, it may not be all 6 new ones anyway. It might be some of the ones that qualified last time, and then some new ones too. I'm open to making it 6. I just...
There are 6 new ones with CPAs.
Well, I'll be willing to modify my motion if the person that made the second will go to 6. We each pick the top 6 to interview.
You agree? Okay. So the motion now is to choose 6 or narrow it down to 6, if I'm understanding it correctly. Any further discussion?
Is that from all applicants from the beginning of time, or only the new applicants that we've received in this last 3 or 4 weeks that we've been?
I thought we had 9 or 10 that have applied total.
Got 6 new ones with
Correct.
CPAs.
But we have 9 or 10 total.
Correct.
You've got 9 total.
So can you send us those 9 applications, and we each pick 6 from that bunch to interview?
Okay, everybody understands the motion now. 9 qualified applicants at this time. We're saying that we'll narrow that down to 6, possibly Monday, depending on how that goes. Any other discussion? Call roll, Mark.
Commissioner Allen?
Aye.
Commissioner Dodd?
Yes.
Commissioner Gooch?
Yes.
Commissioner Johnson?
Yes.
Commissioner Piercy?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens?
Yes.
Commissioner P?
Yes, motion carries. Any other discussion? Sonia, anything else?
No, sir.
All right, we're adjourned, guys.